This is the Mount Fuji, the first mountain that I have painted, and I'll talk about that. I started putting the masking fluid on the Gecko. That's from this Watercolour Secrrets course, is the mountain. Anyway, this ended up working out really well. My leopard gecko looks awesome.
Yeah.
And the sky, all I did was I put more water on it and I let it sit. And I don't even think I really rubbed out the edges. It just sort of fixed itself. So awesome. And that's James's meal for today. It's a sandwich, some pears, cottage cheese and green onions, which James's father ate for breakfast every single day and lived to 99, and he would have lived to 120 had he been able to care for himself. I'm going to review that.
He was neglected by the person who took over his finances and care of his health. That was a member of the family who I won't talk about how much money changed hands. Well, I should. You know what I mean by changing hands. For my father's hands too. And then the place where he was staying, there's no air conditioning, thanks to the caregiver who lived at my dad's expense and air-conditioned comfort. So it was end of August, September. Heat wave in Regina, Saskatchewan. The place where he was staying was so people couldn't get up out of bed. He lived where the pens. They forgot to give him the water overnight. So his blood pressure was way up. And then what they would have done, they phoned us later in the day, my brother and said his blood pressure was down, way down. So what they would have done is just poured water into him without giving him any electrolytes. He would have peed his electrolytes out and he died of a heart attack that evening. The day before had been perfectly all right. So a lot of neglect, and some of it benign, some of it very malign. In other words, we've been told by a lawyer that it was criminal. I'm not talking about the place where he was staying. Anyway.
Yeah, I had never heard of this before.
Campion, yeah.
You have, eh?
Oh, yeah. The person, Marjorie Allingham, who wrote the originals novels, was my second favorite murder mystery writer next to Agatha Christie.
I gotta say, I like the mystery. Well written. And well acted.
Yeah,
BBC did a good job.
It's interesting. Someone characterized Campion, her hero or whatever, as aristocratic, but there was worse. One of Ezra Pound's little lumps of whatever was a mystery writer of sorts. Ezra Pound was such an idiot. He was saying, man, you think you can solve mysteries. What's this about solving mysteries? She doesn't solve them, she sets them. And it's about the only murder mystery where I've only read one of hers, and it's the only one where I figured it out. The only one. So she wasn't even very good from what I can tell, judging from that small sample one. Wasn't very good at setting them. Anyway, he was saying, I've found the solution to our economic ills. It's usura, which is usury. I don't know why he uses kind of like the Latin term usura. And usura is probably more of a way you pronounce it. And of course, the classic users for him would be, he came from Idaho of all places, and were Jews. So apparently the Italians during World War II before, the 20 or so years before, the fascists in Italy weren't that anti-Semitic. They probably were reasonably so, but Ezra Pound did a little, I guess it was regular, radio program for the fascists in Italy during World War II. And apparently it got, some of the content got pretty anti-Semitic. So yeah, he usually charging interest on loans and stuff like that. He figured that was evil. I don't know, I mean the guy would have been kind of left-wing, but left-wing medievalist.
You have to try to encourage people to loan money. How else are you going to do it? They wouldn't do it if there wasn't some sort of benefit to them.
Yeah,
They're taking a risk.
The Catholic Church was against it. Muslim orthodoxy is dead set against it. And that's one of the reasons why both religions have quite a strong, in Islam it's stronger, because the Jews rejected, Jesus was a Jew, so
I mean,
the
what I
Catholics can
find
only take it so
interesting
far.
is now the banks, like it used to be, you would put money into a bank and then they would give you a little bit of a percentage, 2% or something like that, for a benefit to, you'd make a little bit of money having your money in their bank, and then they would loan it out to people and make a lot of money on the interest from the loans, right? And people were like, well, whatever. But now people don't seem to care. They're not getting any money for putting money in the account, and the banks are still making a huge amount,
1%
giving loans, and I don't understand why anybody is putting money in bank accounts.
Or in a credit union or something like that.
It
At
doesn't
least
make
you
any
get
sense.
a
I don't
vote.
know. I guess habit. People are doing it because they've always done it, but for how long? I mean, if they're not making any money putting money in the bank.
Things like banks. Oh, how long? I thought you were saying how long have people been doing it?
No, how long will they keep doing it without
Forever.
any incentive?
I don't get it. They've got a certain degree of security. In other words, they'd be losing against inflation, even with low inflation. I gather the interest rates are lower than the inflation, so they're actually losing money, but at least they're not having it stolen. It's being embezzled from them by the banks by a small amount, but they're not losing the whole thing. There is a security aspect to giving this stuff to the bank. And I was going to say, these loaning kind of institutions have been around, I won't say forever, but it looks like the ancientest during the old Assyrian kingdom, they date it to maybe about 1800 BC, that's a little bit early, but 1650 BC, they would actually arrange loans for caravans of mules. This is before the people on the Fertile Crescent used camels. I'm pretty sure the folks in the Arabian Desert used camels and been using them for a long time. Understand, they're going, hey, Assyriologists, who are generally way smarter than the Egyptologists, but we've got the first picture we've got of a camel dates to about 850 BC, and I believe it's Gindabu the Arab, Aribi, I think what the Assyrians called him, and he's escaping from the Assyrians on a camel. Now hold on a second. So they're saying that they just started domesticating them. Now I've ridden a camel, and I am telling you, I'd want to have them well domesticated maybe hundreds of years before I ever tried riding them. They're huge. And this thing was grumbling and spitting and whatever. You know what I'm saying? It was in the Canary Islands, so come on. It was way before 850 BC.
Yeah, that's just the first picture.
The first picture. And it was the Assyrians were starting to do, it was a relief sculpture and stuff like that. The Egyptians at the same time. Now, people are going, the Egyptians were awesome. They're 500 years ahead of the, they were doing these amazing pictures 500 years before the Assyrians. No. Radiocarbon dating on King Tut's tomb indicates not 1350 BC, but roughly 850 BC. They're doing it at the same time. It was kind of, with the Assyrians, it was reliefs. With the Egyptians, it was paintings and stuff like that. But similar things, like conquest. The Assyrians generally just did a better job. The Assyrians actually drew their king lifelike, like with you've seen the Egyptian things. Here's the king, and here's the queen, and all this sort of stuff, and his flunkies, and so on and so forth. Same thing in battle, like the king, the Egyptian king. He's as big as a giant. It looks like a movie poster or something like that, a modern day movie poster, where some things are blown up and the things in the background, and so on and so forth. Whereas the Assyrian king was portrayed like other people. You can see him talking with flunkies, so on and so forth. So, at any rate, they had these mule expeditions. They're not sure what they were trading in. They figure it was something like, I think some people figure it was lead, some people tin or something like that. Anyway, they were going from the northern part of Iraq to basically the middle part of Turkey. And big, long mule caravans, and they'd borrow money in order to take money to get goods. I think they were taking basically textiles and trading them for these raw metals and stuff like that. And they'd borrow money. So that's a long time ago. It's almost like 4,000 years ago. So that kind of worked for them. You look at the Catholic Church, you look any place where the Catholic Church or where Islam has existed, and of course with Islam it's way worse. I mean, you only have to look at Italy. Where's the scummy part of Italy? Well, it's Sicily. You realize, of course, it used to be called Magna Graecia, Great Greece. The Greeks were settled there more, I guess, or they had more extensive holdings than in Greece itself. And it was part of Sicily, and part of the southern part of, south of Naples and stuff like that. And, okay, it's not that way anymore. It used to be more advanced. Why is it? Because the Muslims were in Sicily like a dirty shirt. Why is Spain and Portugal, particularly Spain, so far behind until very, very recently the rest of Europe, even behind Italy and stuff like that? Well, the Muslims were there 781 years. That's not 7.81 or even 78.1. It's 781 years. That's longer than white folks have been in the New World. Way longer. It's almost twice as long as the English have been in the New World. The English have been in the New World roughly from 1600. French a little bit earlier, although the settlements were after 1600. And the Spaniards were there a little bit longer. Didn't do them much good. Anyway, so I've said before, and I'll repeat it again, about the only places in the world that have a long-standing tradition, might not be that strong, for example, in the United States, of democracy, are places where Calvinism has played a major role. And what is one of the things that Calvinists did? Well, the first thing is they were Protestant. And they actually were fundamentalists when it came to a religion that was actually better in its inception than it was in its realization, starting 300, 400 years after its inception, starting with Constantinople, and about 100 years, not Constantinople, King Constantine, who founded Constantinople. And about 100 years later, they started being punishing. So about 400 AD, they started being punishing. So they went back to the original. But one of the other things is Jean Calvin was the guy who founded Calvinism. Didn't have a problem with usury. They didn't have a problem with loaning, charging interest on loan. I think that's one of the reasons why these areas like England, United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand have been ahead of the world in terms of economic development. And yeah, it is development. Like when you've got life expectancy in these places edging up towards 80 years, and in places that have imitated the economic model, i.e. Japan, so on and so forth, that's better than 30 years. So people who criticize Western society and stuff like that, okay, go back and live on the land. Have your little Woodstock and live 30 years. Live to be 30 years old. And have half your kids die in childbirth or infancy or childhood. Go for it. But F off. Okay, go on. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just get annoyed with this kind of nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
It could be your show today. It doesn't really matter.
Well,
You seem to feel like talking.
well, a little bit. Not really. I don't want to talk about this. It's just disgusting. I'm going through my books, sort. And I read all sorts of stuff that doesn't deserve reading. Oh, man. You know, it's stuff like Mein Kampf, but there's so much lying. You know, the people are going around, Donald Trump's lying. Donald Trump knows that he's lying, and he knows when he's lying. He's a propagandist. He is but different from the nifty, shifty, hefty lefties, all 1.5 brains that are out there watching. He's different. He's an advertiser. He will lie. You guys lie to yourselves. You're that pitiful.
Hey, baby.
And your lies are as skunky as his. Okay.
So anyway, James's cottage cheese and green onions. That's what
Kept my
his
dad.
dad. Yeah, his dad was.
One
I
of the
was
things.
interested in health because I was worried about James after he
Got cancer.
got cancer and all that. And I was worried about my own health too. I mean, my health wasn't great. So anyway, I really got reading a lot about nutrition. I'd always read a bit about nutrition. I've always been interested in it, but I really went into it full time. I stopped working outside the home and just focused in on being a good homemaker, I guess, with nutrition, with meal preparation. The focus was there. I mean, anyway, so that's what I was doing, and so his dad told me some of his secrets about what he did to stay healthy, and he was a healthy man for a long time. I mean, eventually he was starting to show his age, but honestly,
Well, you were 99 and a half,
Yeah.
you're showing your age.
so,
Most people show their age by dying.
yeah.
Well, guys, on average, about 20 years before.
But that's what he ate for breakfast every morning. Was, he said, a bowl of cottage cheese with green onions mixed in.
No?
That's it. That's what his breakfast was. No bowls of cereal, no donuts, nothing like that.
No
He didn't
coffee.
eat those sort of things. He
Sometimes he'd drink tea, no coffee.
that's what he had for breakfast.
Yeah.
So
And you know what did he ever show you? What did he have as a treat every occasion? Maybe fairly regular. A bowl full of horseradish.
oh yeah, he liked eating
Wow.
horseradish too,
Oh, man.
which that's awesome for you.
Yeah, that
And
tastes awful.
every time I'd grow a garden, he'd say, "Did you plant horseradish?" And I'd say, "No, I didn't." But you know what? I should start planting horseradish. It's just I don't have that much garden space to plant
Yeah.
things, and so I think, well, should I plant? You know, so one year I did plant horseradish, I think, but that's it. I haven't been doing, but I should. He was right. He kept asking, because he knows that's a very healthy thing, horseradish. So, and honestly, I think that's why people always say, oh, Japanese people are so healthy because they eat fish. Well, I don't think it's the fish necessarily in the sushi. It's probably the wasabi. And what's in wasabi? Horseradish. So it
could be something
It could
that
be
simple.
that simple, right?
Yeah. Anyway, it's not genetic. they found out that Japanese people who moved to the so-called West and adopt a Western diet, burgers and all that sort of stuff, start suffering from the same sorts of ills, high heart attack rate, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I went to Shoppers Drug Mart. They'll have sales on food on Monday mornings sometimes. The stuff that's going to be expiring soon, and the cottage cheese was expiring soon. So I think I paid $1.65 for a container of cottage cheese. I felt pretty good about that. And I mean, it'll be gone by the end of the day. The Chihuahuas got some, and to my surprise, Angel didn't like cottage cheese. First time I've ever tried it on the dogs.
Yeah, well, there you go. She might just be a little bit wary of
she might be lactose intolerant in her old age. I don't know.
Hard to say.
I mean, we had one dog, Amfred. She was lactose intolerant. She wanted to eat cheese and stuff, but she couldn't.
Well,
it did not go over well with her.
The mere fact that a person might be lactose intolerant doesn't mean that they have a distaste for the food that triggers the intolerance. And I'm a classic example of that. I was going around thinking...
Yeah, but now you can eat it because of the medicine you're on.
So I'm on something like a chemo that can cause constipation or diarrhea. Well, with me, it started out as constipation, and that was about 3 and almost 4 years ago. It wasn't long before it was just diarrhea, bad diarrhea, in the sense that you have about 30 minutes to get to the washroom. Doesn't matter where you are, or else it just but I was going along saying before then, the doctors were asking me, are you I said I was lactose intolerant, and they said, to what? I said, well, I think I'm okay with cheese. No, but now it doesn't matter because the stuff I take controls it.
Yeah.
The lactose intolerant. I mean, before I started taking it, I was running beets at that kind of effect. I don't know why. But now I can chow down on beets, and so much the better, because apparently beets are good for beating cancer.
Anyway. Yeah, I just read on the back that the guy who's playing Campion in here, he was Doctor Who. And I look at the picture and I'm like, yeah, he was. I just forgot.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. He was one of the Doctor Who's from the older series.
He looks just like Campion would look.
Yeah, they did a great
job. Not really
job.
handsome.
Yeah, and the story was great. It was about an artist. And anyway, if you like mysteries, you'll like it.
Death of a Ghost. I don't think I read that.
Oh. Wow.
Well, Marjorie Allingham didn't write many, and they just didn't seem to have all her things at the library.
So, did you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me see some of the books that I've been...
Because you have about 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So, here's one book. It's about Americans fighting communism in Angola. And, of course, it's written by one, what Lenin called a useful idiot. It would be some sort of stupid Western academic. And this would have been written sometime in the late 70s, I think. Anyway, it's accusing the Americans of losing in Vietnam and looking around in the world where they can cause trouble, and Angola is the place. What they did was they retreated out of Vietnam. Understand? Don't understand, I don't care. But what they were fighting was a Cold War, and they won it, and they won it gloriously. And one of it out incurring a terrible number of casualties, particularly civilian casualties. Now, the communists, on the other hand, killed millions and millions and tens of millions of their own people, not to mention other people. Pol Pot, maybe 2 million
You boys have to
of his own people in Cambodia. And then the Vietnamese came in. They were the ones that were showing the world these shells of skulls. Of course, they made sure that they whacked on a much smaller population base, because small population to begin with in Cambodia. And it had been made that much smaller by Pol Pot. But I guess you'd say it was his own people. But the Americans retreated. I mean, retreat is what sensible people do when they're having trouble in a particular area of war. And they retreated. That's what sensible people do. People who aren't sensible are like Stalin when he was attacked by the Germans in 1941. He just told his soldiers, don't retreat. And of course, they knew it would be death to retreat. They'd get shot by the commissars that were put in every unit of the Russian army, the Soviet, so-called Soviets. And Hitler, of course, was classic, you know. His soldiers in Russia were telling, his journal was telling me, like Paulus, I think was the name of one guy, in Stalingrad. He was asking to retreat, and Hitler told him no. So they just got surrounded by the Russians. And pretty well everyone that didn't freeze to death, this is around in the winter, would have been captured by the Soviets and then worked to death, or just starved to death, or frozen to death by the Russians. So, yeah, the Americans, you know, like they decided to go to another theater of war. It already existed. The commies were into Angola in a big, bad way. Never took over there, I recall, not entirely. And the commies there, the Nazi commies, the nationalists and communists, were absolutely awful. As they were in Nicaragua. The Americans actually were the good guys there. They weren't that good. The guys that they were allied with, the Contras, they were less good than the Americans, but they were way better than Ortega. I was talking to one guy recently, and he was saying about Ortega when I was complaining about him. Oh, he's changed. No, he hasn't. Check for the people, the ones who survived on the Mosquito Coast. That was in the 80s. And we wouldn't call it ethnic cleansing. We would call it genocide. The big mistake they made was speaking English. Anyway,